All right, are we okay to get started? Doesn't seem to be, okay, cool. All right, guys, afternoon. I'm here to talk about badass microservices. Yeah, buzzwords we like. My name's Navin. Brief introduction as to what I've done before. I've worked on JBoss open source projects since 2008. I'm currently a consultant for a company called C2B2 Consulting in the UK. And recently I've started doing some development work on Payara. So yes, what is this talk about? Actually, just before I do continue, I should mention this is actually 2 quickie slots, so I'll probably wind up going over the initial 15 minutes, in total probably taking about 20-25 minutes or so. Yeah, so what does this talk about? We'll do a brief introduction to Payara Micro, and I mean, ultimately, it's the container we're going to use to deploy these microservices to. We'll talk about how you can use it, and I've put together some demos, so, you know, cross your fingers and toes, and let's hope that it works at the end. So yes, what is Payara Micro? This is probably one of those cases where it's not so educational to talk about what it is, so let's get rid of it, and instead let's talk about what it isn't. So it definitely isn't a full-blown Java EE app server. It's not fully EE compliant. Neither is it just a web container or a servlet container. It's a bit more than that. Neither is it a container for massive monolithic applications, because ultimately this is here to talk about microservices, and we want to try and make sure our deployments are small. So yeah, cool, microservices, right? We're all ready there in that, you know, waiting to be let out of that cage, to re-architect things, to be, you know, to build these small applications that'll be very nice and easy to manage. But a problem is that we've still got a lot of this old legacy EE code, and we still have to deal with that. So we're not quite feeling so happy, and instead we kind of feel like that, right? You know, we could go and just rewrite everything from scratch, but of course that sort of stuff doesn't quite scale. So we need to find a way to deal with that, to manage it. So that's kind of where Payara Micro can come in and help. So we'll take your standard servlet container, your EE container, sorry, your web container, not EE, which is what I said, and we add in some EE APIs onto it. And that really is the genesis of Payara Micro. It's based off of the embedded GlassFish that basically gives you the web profile. And then after we've added in some APIs, you get this Payara Micro jar file, and you will then be able to like deploy a WAR file through the command line, which is what I'll show you in the demos. And you can also, if you prefer, you can create a fat jar in a main method and do it that way. Okay, right. Demo time. Ready? Okay, so the first demo that I'm going to show you, I had a couple of issues with my IDE importing it in, so it looked all horrible. So instead, I'm just going to show you the GitHub links. So this demo really is just a pretty simple REST service that makes use of the JCache APIs. I'll show you. There we go. That is my REST endpoint. It's called cache. There's a put method where you can put in a key, well, standard key value store, and obviously you can get it out. The only other class in the application is, oh, sorry, I was going to say, guys at the back, can you see that text, or is it too small? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, so fairly standard EE stuff if you guys have built this sort of stuff before, right? I'm guessing none of this stuff is really that new, but it's pretty small, pretty easy to see. Okay, so what I'm going to do, actually, kill that, and kill that as well. Start with a fresh one. So the way that I can start my server instance is like so. Just standard java -jar. Right? So that command is just saying start up the runtime for Payara Micro. I also need to give it a deployment. In this case, in this relative path, right? Pretty straightforward, right? But there's one more flag here that's quite important that I want to use, which is called auto-bind HTTP, assuming I've spelled that right. So by default, when I start the deployment, or when I start the server, it's going to try and bind my HTTP, bind my web container to port 8080, which is standard HTTP, right? But when I try and add more onto it, I'm going to get port conflicts. So if I pass that flag into my startup, what's going to happen is if port 8080 is taken, it's just going to look at the next available port. So 8081, if it's available, it'll take it. If not, it'll look at 8082, so on and so forth. Okay, so we'll start that one up. Which hopefully is going to work. There we go. Let's increase the font size a little bit. Okay. So yeah, as you can see down here at the bottom, it says deployed one more. Cool. Let's get the second one up. And again, in a couple of seconds, we should have that deployment up and running. Cool. So now I've got two instances out, right? Let's try and test it. So what I'm going to try here on localhost 8080, I'm gonna try and put, whoops. I'm gonna try and put that JSON in, right? So that data acts as my key, and the value is another. So again, simple key value store. Put that. And we can see that, yeah, the response is coming back without any content, but that's purely by design. That's intentional. So it's still a 200 code, so we're happy with that. Now we'll try and get that out. Oops. And there we go. So this is still all on the same instance, right? So if I change that to 81, there we go. it's in there. Now, just to prove that I'm not cheating you, I'm going to change that to Devoxx. Okay, so I put that. Response doesn't contain any data. That's fine. And now, if I try and get that again, it says data, Devoxx. We can also test failure on that. In fact, sorry, I got that on the wrong instance. So yes, on 8080, data, Devoxx. So I'm going to kill 8081. And if I perform a get again, I know that I still have my data. So again, pretty simple setup, very simple application, right? In fact, okay, let's hop in there. Main thing, it worked. Relief, right? But what did we learn from that? Did anyone notice me have to do anything to set up a cluster in terms of configuration? I'm going to assume that's okay because nobody put their hand up. So yeah, it automatically clusters. Pretty straightforward. The only thing I had to do, because I'm using the same, because I'm doing it on my laptop, I just had to ensure I added the auto-bind HTTP flag. Okay, so now on to the next demo, which is maybe a little bit more interesting. Aha, presentation mode. Good. So this other demo, what I've set up is basically just a Twitter stream. It's using Twitter's streaming API. So if you guys are tweeting about Devoxx, go ahead, please do so. We'll start picking them up in a bit. And what we do is we've just got a fairly simple EJB. On startup, what we do is we instantiate the Twitter client. It'll collect all tweets with the string Devoxx, lowercase d or uppercase d, and it'll go and dump that into a queue. So within here, I also spin up another thread, which is basically going to start consuming data from this queue, which I have over here, which is in this method called save Twitter data. And I've also modeled my tweets like so. So all tweets have the tweet text as a string. I store like tweet instant. When someone sent the tweet out, I store a list of string as store all my hashtags in a list of strings, and I store who actually sent the tweet out. And after that, what I'm doing is I've got a few REST endpoints that I've built for this. So it's relatively straightforward. I just grab the EJB. This is just what I was using for testing, which is just, okay, if my stream is started up okay, I should be able to collect the number of tweets. So while I'm talking to you about the other endpoints, what I'll do is, let me kill this as well. So I'm going to start. In this case, I'm not going to worry about adding the auto-bind HTTP flag because I know I'm only deploying one instance of it. And There we go. It's deployed up. So that's going to start collecting some tweets in, right? And while it's doing that, I'll just show you one of the other endpoints that I had put together. So this is the search tweets endpoint. It's going to return just a JSON of whatever parameter I give it. It's going to return a JSON of all the tweets based on a search parameter. So it's going to collect all the tweets with the string Devoxx in it. So in theory, if I run a search with Devoxx, I should get some tweets. Get out of there. Okay. Let me just grab something from my history that I was using to test. Okay. So now if I run a search there. Okay, cool. So we've managed to collect 5 tweets. Let's run a search on that. This is very likely to break because it hasn't. Very good. The way I'm generating the JSON is really, really bad and really broken. So it's in my testing, the number of times this has come up with some rubbish is very, very frequent. So yeah, it's actually collected these tweets, really. Does anybody want to help me test it? Aslak, do you want to send out a tweet? Can contain anything.
To you or just Devoxx?
Just have the string Devoxx in there. This is just to prove that I'm actually collecting some real tweets out there. And, well, this part really has to work. Done? Okay. So I'm going to change my endpoint there to by user. And what's your Twitter handle, Aslak? Is that spelled correct? Okay. So now if I send that request off, there we go. So it's actually managed to collect the tweets correctly, thankfully. And yeah, one other one I had put in was so by hashtag counter. There we go. So the hashtag Devoxx, all lowercase, we've collected 5 times. Out of all the tweets that we've sent, lowercase Devoxx has been collected 5 times. And yeah, so in terms of the actual demo, that was more or less that. I actually had a better fist bump for that one working. But again, what we learned is that we can still create these fairly small modular services using our standard Java EE APIs. And we can get them live pretty easily, pretty quickly. And the main thing that I did, or another thing that I did want to show, which will be of use. If I do the actual size of that jar file is like 58 meg. So it's really small for you to grab, make use of, and deploy in your Docker containers, or even on Raspberry Pis. So it's really quick, really easy, really small, and, well, hence why it's got the name Micro in it, right? So yeah, summing up, well, what did we see? We deployed a web app through the command line. We built some RESTful services using standard EE APIs. But remember that it's not fully EE compliant, but we've still got the power to do some of these things, partially because these APIs are still quite useful. And also, as I said, you've got all this legacy stuff using these EE APIs that you can slowly start moving over. In the first demo, we also tested like auto cluster discovery and failing that over as well. So yeah, that's more or less that. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to come around and ask away. All right. Thanks a lot, guys.